Lunar Crater Radio Telescope Prototype 020B. This is a deployment of the mock-up of the reflector dish on 8 lift wires, here depicted as yellow nylon lines. The 8 corners of the reflector dish are attached to the lift wires with gray tape at the corners and safety pins. The safety pins go through the lift wires, providing positive contact and no possibility of slipping. Unfortunately, during the manufacturing process, there were some errors in the mesh, and so there are some tangles involved. And here, I'm undoing some tangles. This corner is attached to a lift wire. Unfortunately, the mesh goes over and under another part of the mesh. Had to be straightened out. Manufacturability is going to be a really big deal in the final product, even more so than in this tiny prototype. I'm straightening out the mesh by hand, and as you can hear and see, we have quite a bit of wind today in the Texas winter. Of course, wind won't be a problem on the moon, but it will be a problem for any large-scale test that we do on Earth. My initial plan was to pull on the lift wires from the edge of the crater, but there's too much friction in the system for a smooth deployment in that manner. So I ended up having to go tug on each lift wire individually to make the dish deploy. At this point, I ran into another tangle in the mesh. At the JSC Rock Yard, there are some rocks, including that lovely piece of pumice just behind the apparatus. That piece of pumice is very porous, and it also catches on the mesh very easily. You can see me detaching a safety pin and reattaching it to the lift wire with a detangled mesh. In our actual lunar crater, we will not have an enormous boulder like that near the center of the crater. At least our preliminary scans don't indicate such a thing. But a large boulder like that could seriously cause a problem for the actual deployment of the dish. Now in this prototype, the dish is actually in contact with the surface of the crater, which is not our plan for the final configuration on the moon. The plan is to maintain a lifting of the mesh so that of the reflector dish so that it never touches the floor of the crater. Now with all of the tangles straightened out, I can commence with the deployment. You can see the pulleys doing their job. All of the pulleys activate. So pulling on one side also pulls on all the rest of the sides. the actual crater we use on the moon, it will have a much different depth to diameter ratio. So we will not have the same angles that we have here in the JSC Rock Yard large crater. By iteratively pulling on the lift wires, I'm making the mesh deploy to its full configuration eventually. As you can see, the wind is causing a little bit of a problem, as is that rock. At this point, the mesh is almost completely deployed. That's it for prototype 020B of the Lunar Crater Radio Telescope.